I'm alive. Yes. Oh dear. Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. My name's Nigel of Tunnel Mental, and there's a link below in the description of a few things that you could actually read, look at, listen to. Mostly just one man's view of perception and how no one is right, but everyone is right. I think I called this something like Speak Your Truth, or some form of what you have, that you believe, that you want to say to the world, because you've got to speak up. I'm sorry. You got to speak up. This goes back to, when I was a child. I mean, everything goes back to everybody when they were a child, doesn't it? Really, when you get those first formative years in your life, and your parents are trying to interpret what you want because you haven't mastered language. I've got lots of stories about mastering language, but the truth is, we are woefully inadequate at saying what we want. Woefully inadequate. We don't say what we want. We hint at it. You know, our language has been during my lifetime, our language, our common language, between each other, has been twisted and weaponized. So you can't even say that which you think is the right thing for you. So, think again of those parents trying to interpret the child. Why are they crying? Well, most of the time it's food. No, the thing is, we have to start to recognize that obscuring the language, obscuring it. So there are trigger words. Almost everything has become weaponized, especially the language. Over recent years, you're not even allowed to say certain words without promoting some sort of knee-jerk reaction, and you get banned for saying certain words that have been commonplace in language for 68 years, my 68 years of my life. I can't say the word, or I used for the last 5 years, and they change them around to keep us confused. Who are they? The people who are running things, the powers that were, as I like to call them. A lot of people call them the powers that shouldn't be and all this stuff. But it's like, in truth, they're the powers that were. Why are they the powers that were? Because your decision about what you do is your life. That's your authority. Be your own authority. Speak your truth. Live your truth. I come across as Joe Blunt when I do that. It's like, there's an expression, Joe Blunt. I come across too blunt sometimes. And it causes people pain because it changes their perception of me and puts them in a different mood. And the general mood of what I feel when I'm out there, excuse me, in the world, the general mood is one of slightly depressed, if not generally hugely depressed people, because they're not doing what they want, because they can't express what they want, even to the people that they love. I mean, what do you want? I mean, it's a simple question. You know, what's at the core of your desire? I want a better world, right? So I go about creating one by helping people understand language, understand music, art, expression, free expression, to understand that you can be free. Even within a society that has you locked up by your own language, you can still be free. It takes work. And the greatest challenge of all, I mean, really, the greatest challenge of all for me has been with the person I truly love. And the limitations of that person's language is infuriating. Just even to interact with on a very simple basis where you just relax and just talk. The command of language that that person uses towards me is a constant trigger. And if I say anything, it seems to trigger that person too. So am I attracted to my opposite? Somebody who doesn't really give a shit about the way in which they communicate. We're in the information age. Well, what's the most important thing about information? Communicating it. And yet people are la 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 la, I don't want to hear it. Over the past 5 or 6 years, I've been doing a lot of chats online due to forced limitations, forced isolation, forced bullshit. But the truth is, for me, this has been an opportunity to define language, to define how I interact. And it's almost like you have to take a vow of silence. It's much better if you don't say anything than say anything, because anything you say acts as a trigger. But you see how that loop works, you know? You become isolated by non-interaction. Sure, I can smile. The smile is a great way of passing around a better feeling about everything, but it's not enough. I smile, I nod, and then I interact. I have to say something. I have to, because I do believe that we need this conversation to open up. You know, the words you can't use are becoming more and more and more evident. You're not allowed to say this, that, or the other. You know, I can get into all sorts of arenas there, but you're not allowed to say those anymore. And it's not, I'm not having a go. I am having a go, right? I'm having a go at censorship, and I'm also having a go at self-censorship. I'm also having a go at the education system, within which you're not allowed to say certain words and do certain things. And it's like this vocabulary was developed over the centuries and centuries by people who really knew how to manipulate people with words. So, in as much as our language is our communication tool, it is also a weapon. I mean, it goes back to, oh gosh, when I was a kid, somebody said, "Can you spell that?" And I'm like, "It's not a spell, it's just a word." But it is a spell. Spell is spelling, you know, casting a spell. Here's two words that will trigger a lot of my friends: Trump, Musk. It's funny how their names have different meanings. You know, I mean, they actually have a meaningful name. My name, Mitchell, doesn't have it's just a name, right? It's a moniker. There's a Trump, playing the Trump card. You know, what's that all pervasive marking on the world that animals do? Oh, a secretion called musk. There are connotations, even in your words, your names, calling the names out. They have specific meanings, but they don't necessarily all have to be like conspiracy theory shit. It just has to be real. I mean, one of my friends wrote a book that I helped with the Audible book side of it, because I know a little bit about recording music and art and words and listening very closely to mixing. And I helped with the audio aspect of it. Her name's Danny Katz. She wrote The Language of Betterarchy, which is a great book. It's a really good book. And I obviously I had to listen to it. And then I purchased it. No, she sent me a copy, which was lovely. And I still reference it a lot because most of our language, we've had to become so guarded about what we can and cannot say, what we should and shouldn't say, what we will and won't say, what we advocate as our interested exploration into this world. I mean, so its limitation is more than language. Its limitation becomes more and more to do with how we interact. It's really tough. And it's not new, but it's being weaponized more and more. I mean, having somebody in charge tell you what to do hasn't changed. I mean, since you were a kid, there was always somebody in charge of you. So it hasn't changed, except they've got more and more and more controlling. And the simplest tool of all is the language. And they'll change that too. And they have. I'm a globalist. I'm a sustainable, free thinking globalist. And now everybody's going to go, oh no, he wants that, this, that. I just want freedom. All I want is the freedom to express myself in the world. That's it. No borders. I know. Ideology is you have to keep that ideology at the center of your being. What do you want? Well, I want to see a world where people are kind to each other and interact with empathy and compassion. And I can go about doing that myself. Yes, that's fine. I'm doing that as best I can. But in an increasingly restricted world, I'm not doing it in a opening up and free world. I'm doing it in a world where even the language is weaponized. Everything is weaponized. And it's a control system. And once you recognize that this control system is limiting your desire in life, you've got to make a stand. You've got to start using your language. What do you believe in? And be honest. And it hurts sometimes because people aren't ready. But will they ever be ready for the truth? This is a subject of many, many free journalists and writers and expanded thinkers that I love and appreciate. Is we need to progress beyond this control system, beyond it, because we can't truly express our desire in a controlled environment. It's like, oh, okay, well, that was an experiment that I did in my room. This is why most of the music I really love, most of you haven't heard of. Why? Because it's from people that are bedroom blasters. What's what we used to call it, when people would get enough musical equipment to record, even go out and play for their mates and all that stuff, but didn't really want to get into the public sphere of judgment of others. They wanted to just freely express themselves. Bedroom blasters, we used to call them. And most of the music I love is going to stay within that constraint, because once they enter the world of restricted expression, I mean, to restrict their expression, oh yeah, but you're that type of music in that little box, in those people's little heads, in that little area. Once you get beyond that in your expression, in your free expression, it's not about how many units you can push in a society that doesn't support you. And so don't worry about it. Just put it out there. Just keep putting out your music. It doesn't matter if people judge it either way. As long as it's free expression and you're really doing it for good intentions, and there are things we're not able to even remotely understand that are going on in society. The assumption that we're not being led, it's like, here, kitty, kitty, kitty. The assumption that we're not being led by our ideology. I've had to change my ideology. I've had to change my view on the world so many times, and I have to go back to the core self. As a child, what was it I really wanted? I wanted love and peace and understanding. That's all I wanted. Somebody to understand me and be loving and peaceful. That's it. Very simplistic views. But my language has been diverted. My way of life has been diverted. The place where I live became hostile to me. All of these things have happened in my life. But how did I react to it? Do I react to it with like, come on, then let's smash you down? No. What you do is you find a way to express that freedom, that liberty, that idealism within yourself, and then you go out into the world and you help others. You make the music, you make the art, links below, and you try not to deviate from making a better world. You have to have a purpose, a sense of purpose. I know people late in life, like, gosh, there was a man that worked his whole life in a dead-end job and just played the game and went through life with full blinders on. Then he retired and he'd done all right for himself, and he had his little house, and that was a life he chose. He really didn't go outside of the guidelines that were presented to him when he was a young man, and just stayed there. And in his 70s, he was in his house and didn't know what the hell to do. So he started to paint. And he started painting his walls. He took everything off the walls, like his belongings, everything. He took, he just just painted, just expressed himself. And it wasn't for anybody else's edification, it was for himself. It just so happens that one of the people he used to work with called by his house and went in and went, "What the heck? How long have you been doing this?" He became a very celebrated artist, but he didn't start until he was in his 70s. You know, late 60s, he retired, probably 4 or 5 years of don't know what to do with my life, and then just started to paint. And, you know, it's not the fact that, I mean, it is the fact that he's celebrated, but we'd have never heard of him. But it was his free expression that he didn't. He was very sad, man. When interviewed, he was still very depressed. It's not like it took him. I mean, obviously, it helped him with his depression, but at the same time, his recognition of his talents, his inert talents that were suppressed his whole life, his recognition of that at a late age was kind of sad for him. But his art spoke. His art spoke to people. And that to me is the art of communication. Anyway, that's my pontification, 22 minutes in. And I'm going to drink my coffee. I'm going to get on with my day. I'm going to help others. I'm going to start working on a new piece of music. The links below to Tunnel Mental will find some of what I've done. And feel free to do what you want with it. All right. But find your truth and try and express it. Our language has been definitely weaponized against us. We can't communicate in this information age. We're finding it more and more difficult to communicate because certain words, I mean, just look at the word sustainability. What does that mean? Look up the word and its meaning, and then look it up as how it's been. Oh, but that's not sustainable. You know, how it limits people. Sustainability is the opposite of limitation. You sustain something, right? Press the sustain button on a piano. It prolongs and elongates, expands the meaning. Where sustainability, oh, you're one of those people. You're whoa. Look up the words. Use your language. All right. I love you, all of you, unconditionally. Cheers then. Boing.